Hello, good evening, and welcome to Monkeys with Fire. How is everybody doing tonight? Hope you're all well. Hope you're getting ready for the weekend. So then, we conclude our week of Star Trek Adventures coverage by taking a look at the newly released 2nd edition core rulebook for Star Trek Adventures from Modiphius Entertainment. Shout out to Modiphius for providing a copy of the core rulebook for us this evening to take a look through. Also, Modiphius very generously have provided the channel with a giveaway PDF, so if you would like a chance to win a copy of the core rulebook in PDF, the link to the giveaway is in the show description. Go and click on that. I will be announcing the winner on Monday next week, so you have a couple of days to get your entry in. Okay, well, let's jump to the table and take a look. But before we do, I do always point out that there may be some small spoilers as we go through the book this evening. I will try to sort of stay away from them as much as I can. We won't be taking a look at every single page, but hopefully we'll give you a good idea of how this book has developed, because of course with it being a 2nd edition. And of course I welcome the chat, both live tonight and in the comments, to share their experiences with Star Trek, what they like, what they don't like. Of course we all have differing opinions. Everyone's opinion is valid. Please do share it with us. There's no wrong answers. We are probably all a bit geeky about Star Trek, and discussion, healthy discussion, is always part of nerdom, isn't it? So let's enjoy geeking out on Star Trek this evening. Good evening, Adam. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Hi, how's it going? I've been wondering about the Star Trek Adventures for a bit. So you are a brand new potential player? You've not played Star Trek Adventures? Have you played any of the Modiphius 2D20 game systems? We've taken a look at quite a few of their games on the channel over the past couple of years. All right, let's go to the table and take a look. So here we are. This is a hefty tome. It is the core rules, and so there is a lot of weight to this book. I'm just going to take a look at the back here. What do we have? Space, the final frontier. The Star Trek Adventures role-playing game takes you to the final frontier. From the 21st through to the 32nd century, join Starfleet, the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Star Empire, and countless other civilizations, and journey across the Star Trek universe with your crew. Explore strange new worlds, encounter fantastical alien life forms, and engage in dramatic adventures in a detailed and immersive galaxy. Tell your stories and unravel the mysteries of the unknown, to boldly go where no one has gone before. See, oh, still sends shivers. So what do we have here? The Star Trek Adventures core rulebook contains a complete and updated version of the 2D20 system rules designed for an authentic Star Trek experience. An extensive primer on Star Trek, including details on a range of societies, worlds, species, and the scientific concepts that underpin this timeless universe. 14 player character species to choose from, including Andorian, Cardassian, Klingon, Orion, and Vulcan. Guidelines for both novice and experienced games masters, offering advice on challenging your players with dramatic and thoughtful gameplay unique to the Star Trek universe. game statistics and graphics for 15 playable starship classes, including Federation, Klingon, and Romulan vessels. Dozens of non-player characters, starships, and creatures to populate your missions, including Federation, Klingon, Cardassian, and Dominion. Historical excerpts, personal logs, and intercepted communications provide fresh perspectives and insights from across the galaxy. Created by an expert Star Trek development team, including a diverse mix of experienced and new artists, designers, developers, editors, and writers. So there we go. That is what we have to go through. Adam saying, I haven't. I saw that there was a solo edition of Star Trek, which is what caught my eye. Indeed. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, Adam. That's actually a good point. The Star Trek Adventures system from Modiphius, I believe it's around 7 years since the first edition was launched. And in that time, Modiphius has launched the Klingon core rules, which is where they have taken on board a lot of the player feedback that they've started to amass over those years and implemented tweaks to the core rules. I kind of think of that as maybe a 1.5 version of the rule set. Then, I think it was last year, they released the Captain's Log, which, as you point out, is a solo playing experience. And again, it's a tweaked version of the 2D20 system. And I kind of think, well, they've probably experienced more, they've moved on, they've developed the rule set. It's kind of a 1.75, even though it's more contained and, of course, designed for a solo experience. They're still moving forward with the 2D20 system. And so now this, of course, is the second edition. This is the very latest edition of their rule set, where they've been able to take on board all of that feedback from 7 years worth of players playing and commenting on it and refine these rules to their optimum. And I'm sure that we'll probably find that these updates will filter through into a lot of their other game systems, maybe Fallout and Dune, as two that I can just quickly pick off the top of my head there. So, yes, I think we might find this is the start of a rollout for maybe second editions on other titles. So, I'm taking, Adam, would you be a Star Trek fan? I imagine that is the major appeal of the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game, to be able to actually play within the Star Trek universe. And so, spoilers, this is the definitive edition. Okay? Modiphius do a fantastic job on their rule sets, and this collates everything to do with Star Trek from the earliest known sort of series all the way through to the most recent. So, right off the bat, if you are a Star Trek fan, you probably would enjoy this, even if you're not into role-playing games, because there's so much Star Trek information jammed into these pages. If you are an existing player of Star Trek Adventures 2D20 system and you want to have the very latest rule set, here it is. This is what you would get. And of course, if you want the very latest as far as all of the TV shows and the lore, it's all in this book as well. So Adam, you're saying, yeah, in my adult life I gravitated more towards Star Wars, but I grew up on Star Trek, so it has a special place in my heart. TNG is my favourite. We actually were looking through 2 source books previous to this. We looked through the Gamma Quadrant and the Delta Quadrant source books for the first edition, which you can use with this second edition core rules. And of course, those books essentially focus on the series of Deep Space Nine and Voyager, so you should go in and check those out. Now, for those who want to have an understanding as to what the major differences are in the rules for the second edition, I would advise, click on this, hopefully it works, there we go. This is the Modiphius website, this is their news blogs. These are very informative, and they've been doing this obviously for quite some weeks in the build-up to the launch of the second edition, and ultimately this details all of the things that they have updated. So if you are an existing player, this is probably what you want to look at first, so that you already know the rules and you just want to see what the changes are. So as it says, it's a cleaned up and refined presentation of the rules. As we were mentioning before, lessons have been learned. Lots of guidance and advice have come up from the player's guide and the Games Master guides from a few years ago, been refined and worked into the core of the game. Expanded guidance on the use of the traits mechanic. They have removed challenge dice. A wealth of character options, including 14 character species in the core book, with the life path options for enlisted crew and character roles, punchier, more evocative talents, updated advancements and reputation rules. These were first featured in the Klingon Empire core rulebook, and revised starship mechanics. So as you see, it's everything that they have learned over the past 7 or so years incorporated into this one book. Let's go back to the book and take a look. But I feel that we do need to finish off the week with proper Star Trek theming. There we go. This feels better already. All right, let's jump on in. So we open up and we have this wonderful star map. We've seen this actually several times, haven't we? And remember, of course, I'm going to have to talk about this from the perspective of somebody coming on in new to the game. This will be very, very familiar for people who have played the first edition, but I love this because as a Star Trek fan, the first thing you do is you start going through the star map, trying to find the planets that you recall, trying to find little points of interest, like, well, where is Deep Space Nine in amongst all of this? And is the Genesis planet in here somewhere? Of course, it depends on the timing of this particular map, doesn't it? But we can see Sol, Earth, is just right there in the middle, and just slightly off from there is it Wolf 359? We were talking about that earlier in the week. We have, of course, credits. A large number of people work to put these books together. Very talented group. And then we have a breakdown. Now, I'm actually going to skip here because we have our introduction, and we have the introduction to the actual Star Trek universe. But what I like in all Modiphius games, and I want to find it, where is it? Here we go. I like this, is their books always detail the structure of basically what each of the chapters cover, with a bit of a summary and then a breakdown on each of the chapters going into more detail. So essentially the book is broken down into 3 parts. Each part has maybe 3 or so chapters associated to it. Part 1 is the Star Trek universe, Part 2 is playing the game, and Part 3 is running the game. And in fact, Part 1 is the largest section within this book. There are some... Oh, let's have a quick look. Back page. 377 plus pages to this book. It is huge, but it does give you all the information you need to be able to play a game in Star Trek universe. But I also like, just on this page here, the core mechanic in the simplest way possible. They basically tell you how you play the game. And again, for new players, so basically when your character attempts a task, the games master tells you the difficulty of the task, usually a number from 0 to 5. You check your character sheet and select an attribute and a department that best fits the desired action. Attributes and departments have ratings defining your character's physical and mental composition. So this is very, typical role-playing. You'll have played it, experienced this many times in different games. So you add the selected ratings together to establish your target number. Then you roll 2d20, sometimes more, depending on any bonuses you might have, and check if any die rolls equal to or under the target number. So say, for example, you had a attribute and a department score of 2, both of them 7, you've got 14. If you roll under 14, that would count as a success. If you roll under 14 on both of your d20s, that's obviously 2 successes. And depending on the number of successes, depending on how difficult the task is, you might need to have some elements that you can give you more dice. And of course, the more successes you got, the better it is to be able to succeed at the task in hand. If you roll a 20, things go disastrously wrong, as is typically the case with my dice rolls. So, 2 pages there, pretty much. We already know what the basic test mechanic is, and then we know what we're going to be facing within the book. Throughout the book itself, we have consistently wonderful artwork. I'll point out some of my favourite pieces as we go through. But you will notice that this book now, because it is dealing with essentially just shy of, 60 years worth of Star Trek, it's got a lot to cover. It has to cover all the shows. To make sure that everybody's favourite show has some form of representation. So, right from the offset, this is the Star Trek Primer. This is for those who, well, if you wasn't familiar with Star Trek or you wanted to learn more about it, get more in depth, this is the place to go, and it's pretty damn good. As a Star Trek fan, this is a great read. So we learn about the culture and economy, religion, society, technology and star dates. Have you ever wondered how the star date is created? There's a little bit of a section here. Holograms. And then transporters. These are the basics we kind of have a good idea of already. We then start looking at notable civilizations. So of course, we have the coalition of planets. The Federation's roots originated with a single planet in the Terran system, Earth. The Klingon Empire, Romulan Empire, Cardassian Union, Ferengi Alliance, Orion Syndicate, Borg Collective. We were looking at the Borg Collective last night in the Delta Quadrant source book. As I say, some of those books from the first edition are still valid with the second edition. Just some elements will need a little bit of tweaking, but for source books, that's all just great source information for your games, all still valid. We have the Dominion, and then other civilizations, the Packleds, the Q Continuum, the Folian Assembly. There is so much. We then go on to eras of play. So this is where the entire Star Trek universe is open for you to play within. So be that the Star Trek Enterprise series, going into the original series, going into the original series movies, going into the Next Generation, or to Deep Space Nine, or to Voyager, going into, what else we got? We got Lower Decks. We got Strange New Worlds. We got Discovery. We got the Picard timeline. So there are so many eras for you to play within, and it tries to touch on all of it. Gives you rundown of technology through the centuries. Of course, you're playing in the Enterprise era, then your top warp speed is warp 5, whereas once you get to the next generation, you're hitting warp 9. And of course, that means that in the Enterprise era, the space that you're able to fly within is so much smaller and takes you so much longer. And of course, because due to that, there would be certain races that would not be available to include in campaigns because they just hadn't been discovered. Granted, of course, this gives you then the freedom to be able to discover some of those races. Maybe your ship and your crew were the first ones to encounter them. So we've got to get a setting. We then start looking at Starfleet as an actual organisation. There's always these nice little call-outs where they write in character. Maybe it's the captain of a starship or a science officer, just trying to give you a little bit of insight. We have Division 14 and Section 31 being mentioned. Section 31 will be featuring in the near future. Details on the Prime Directive. One of the pillars of the Federation as they go out and explore the galaxy. Starfleet Academy. Now, I am realising we're getting a little bit of light shine on the book here. Those who had the first edition may, of course, notice that Modiphius has listened to the feedback and they've changed the graphic design of the second edition. The first edition had the black pages and the Lacars graphic design that you see on the other side of the screen, but it's a little bit harder to read when you're at the gaming table, so they've gone for the white page dark text, which now, of course, the light shines on it. Typical, hey? Duty assignments. So when you get first assigned to your starship, what type of role are you going to take? What is your quarters like? And then types of missions for the ship. Is it going to be a science and exploration or a diplomatic ship? Or are you going to be offering aid or defense? The Federation is a large, vast area of space. We have first contact and second contact. I think second contact was something that was brought up in the Lower Decks series. Looking at away teams, as you can see, there is so much. Chapter 3, we then start looking at the different kinds of planets. Of course, a Class M planet is a habitable Earth-like planet, ideal for human colonization, but then of course we have many other types of planet. Different civilizations and life forms, because not everything out there in the galaxy is going to look like us or behave like us or be made up in the same way as us. And of course, Star Trek is all about discovering new life and new civilizations. Space-based phenomena, life cycle of stars. It's really it's a lesson, isn't it, in science, and that's of course I guess it's one of the bases of Star Trek. It was always thoughtful science fiction. Star Wars was more about the heroic romance, the Sinbad in space kind of style. Of course, I like both. Space-time and subspace. Warp drives, wormholes, alternate universes. Of course, you know, spoilers if you wasn't aware of any of these elements. But you have had 50-odd years to watch. Time travel. That's an important concept that always props up in Star Trek adventures. Types of time travel. Wormholes, gravitational time dilations, temporal fractures, time particles, omnitemporal beings and artifacts. See, that's the great thing about having a franchise that has been around for so long. They have so much information to draw upon, and it makes for a role-playing game to give it lots and lots of depth. We go on into chapter 4, reporting for duty. This is where you are able to create your character, and there are 2 ways of doing this in the game, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because I found it easier when I looked at this. Here we go. So we got the life path summary. I think that's the right one. Is it? I think it is, yes. So step 1, choosing your species. Step 2, the environment. Step 3, your upbringing. Step 4, your career path. Step 5, your experience. Step 6, career events. And step 7, finishing touches. And it goes through then, so you've got it all laid out. It essentially goes through each of these steps. So, of course, the first thing was choosing your species. And we have some wonderful artwork to depict each of the different kinds of player character species that you can be. And in this game now, it is broadened out the number that you can actually play as. So we got Andorian. Oh, what's that? Anar? Subspecies of Andoria. Bajoran. Betazoid. Right. Cardassian. Denobulan. Ferengi. Human. Klingon. Orion. Romulan. Tellarite. Trill. Vulcan. So there you go. Those are all the species that you can initially play as, and that actually pretty much covers everything. So you could set your game on a Federation starship, but then you could be a Romulan if you wanted, or you could be a Klingon. And as we go through the book, you'll notice that they do choose artwork from all the many Star Trek shows. So for some, this is a style of Klingon that they're not necessarily very familiar with, depending on which shows you have watched. So they do give a nod to all of the shows. We have move on to step 2, defining the environment that your character grew up in and their home world. We then have elements about their upbringing, whether they were on a agricultural or rural, artistic or creative, business or trade, diplomacy and politics, science and technology, Starfleet or military. And then this all adds depth to your character. You can spend a lot of time working on creating your character. The next one is your career path. And it always gives you little examples so that relating it back to the various series, just in case you wasn't sure as to what type of character. If you're familiar with the show, you're going to know what type of character it's going to be. Yes, actually, we got Liam Shaw being mentioned there, so that's from Star Trek Picard Season 3. We have our experience, and I'm setting an age for our character. Career events. These all enhance your character, just adding a little bit. To give an example, here we go. Conflict with a hostile culture. The character was involved in a battle with a hostile force. They gain a +1 to their fitness, a +1 to their security, and suggestions for focus, hand phasers, hand-to-hand combat, or tactical systems. So this is how the events of the character's career affect your actual character's attributes and traits, making every character unique. And then finally we have finishing touches. Working your way through, just making sure everything's correct. And this is interesting, you can add a pastime. At the end of the character creation, you may select a pastime which represents a hobby or passion. Creative, crafts, knowledge, performance, self-improvement, sports and games. That's very sort of next generation, isn't it? We always saw the crew engaging in different pastimes. Data learning to paint and play instruments. And then character role. A character's place within the crew of their ship or station is represented as a character role. It's important consideration. So Adam, with your character, since we've gone through quite a bit there, what type of character would you create? What species? And then what kind of role? So we have service roles of commanding officer, executive officer, operations manager, chief engineer, chief of security, chief tactical officer, flight controller, navigator, science officer, chief medical officer, ship's doctor, ship's counselor, communications officer. There's quite a few, isn't there? And then those are all the Starfleet based roles, and of course you can adapt those for vessels or stations from other species, but then we have other kind of roles that are more maybe civilian based, so bodyguards or an expert, an intelligence agent or a merchant, political liaison, a translator. So there's a fair number there, isn't there? So you can be a commanding officer. Ah yes, even if the commanding officer does not hold the rank of captain, They are usually referred to as captain by their subordinates aboard a starship. Because I think the next part is actually our rank. Indeed it is, there we go. So going through all the details of basically the rank order within Starfleet, enlisted crew. We then move on to equipment. So that was, let me just get it right. Gotta go back a fair number of pages. So this was the character life path, wasn't it? Let me just find it. Yes. So that's creating your character using the life path. So 7 steps, with each step allowing a new choice from a list of options. The alternative is doing creation in play summary, which is a much quicker version of creating your character. So creation in play is a simpler and swifter method of character creation over the life path. It requires you to know what you want your character to do before play begins. So step 1, choose your character's role. Step 2, assign the character's attributes. Step 3, choose character's species. Step 4, assign the character's primary departments. Step 5, let's choose a single value. And then step 6, begin play. So if you wanted to get into it very, very quickly, this is the method you might choose. And we get some details then on creating supporting characters. Again, creation. Going into talents and all of the benefits that they provide. And of course the talents are what try and make your character individual from other similar characters of the same species. Again, there's so much to go through. Character development, character arcs, reputation, being awarded the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor, reprimands. You got to have both sides of the coin, I guess. So that was everything to do with the primer, everything to do with creating your character. But there is another character in Star Trek Adventures, and that, of course, as it says, is your home among the stars. This is the bit that I like. It's the starships. So starships are essentially created in a similar manner. And of course, I guess everybody has a favourite kind of starship. Do put it into the chat, into the comments. Let me know, what is your favourite starship? Let's see if it's featured in the core rules. Of course, it goes through everything. So about the bridge, about communications, cargo bays and holodecks and science labs, transporter rooms, and then it's a similar process to creating the starship as it was your character in the quick style. First of all, choose a time frame, as in what year your starship, the era that your starship is from, because of course that will mean certain kinds of starships are not available to you. Choose a space frame, choose a mission profile, create a service record, and then determine if it has had any refits. So space frames. Here we go. And again, we have special rules on certain elements of starships, whether it can do a source of separation, whether it has landing gear, whether it can do a source of separation and reconnect. That's an important differentiation between the two there. Polarized hull plating. So we have NX class starship. We have the Constitution class starship. I am going to say, that's not my Enterprise. Yeah, I know it's obviously, this is showing the very latest of what Star Trek has to offer, but for me, you're going to show the Constitution, it's got to be the 60s ship. Even the 60s rendered, updated version of the ship. But this one's a bit too new and shiny. Excelsior, Ambassador, California, Galaxy class, Intrepid. We were looking at the Intrepid last night. And of course, this gives each of these starship panels gives you an overview, tells you a little bit about the capabilities, refits and variants, suggested mission profiles, naming conventions. This is something I wasn't aware of, why the ships are named as such. And then notable examples. These are obviously ships that are being featured in the shows or the movies, or possibly even in the extended lore of Star Trek. Maybe is it Star Trek Online, or maybe the comics or books. And then of course we do have the statistics of the actual ship in game terms, for their systems and departments, weapons, talents, and any special rules that are relevant. Of course, the Intrepid has its landing gear because it's the only ship other than the Bird of Prey that and shuttlecraft that can land. And I won't hear otherwise. You can discuss that in the chat. We got the Sovereign, we got the Constitution 3, the is it Neo Constitution, which was featured in Picard Season 3. And then we do go on to non-Starfleet ships. So if you wanted to play as a species other than in the Federation, we got Klingons, we got the D7, the classic Klingon battleship. We've got the Burrell, which is essentially, it's the Bird of Prey, isn't it? As featured in Star Trek 3. So this is the only ship that I've noticed in this that does actually go back to the classic TOS era of design, which is, I think that's the Romulan Bird of Prey, because underneath it has this wonderful sort of feathered winged design. And then of course we do have the Romulans, I always get this wrong, the Derricks. Yeah, the Derricks class. We are back. We have the Galor, which is a Cardassian ship. Decora, which is the Ferengi. And that pretty much means that you can play as any of the major species. And then we have mission profiles and enhancements. Again, so much detailing about service records and refits, starship talents, starship weaponry. Again, depending on the era will determine how potent these weapons are. Different kinds of torpedoes, tractor beams, small craft, different shuttle crafts, shuttle pods, runabout, captain's yacht. And then we go into technology and weapons. As you can see, there is so much information. So, all of that, as much as yes, we've learned all about Star Trek, we have created a character, we have created our starship. We're up to page 250. So it's near enough, that's 2/3 of the book. We finally get to the section of, okay, we're going to teach you how to play the game now. Again, anybody who has played any of the Modiphius 2D20 systems will find all of this very, very familiar. A few little tweaks, as we detailed right at the beginning. We're going to be rolling, we're going to combine our attribute and our department. We're going to get a total figure. We're going to roll a number of d20s, and we are trying to roll under the target number that we've set. And every success, depending on how difficult the task is, if we meet that number of successes, then we are, well, successful. So, for example, here we go. Example difficulties. So, a level 2 difficulty, researching obscure information, shooting an enemy with a phaser or disruptor, repairing a transporter pad while under fire. Difficulty 5 is the greatest, so researching a subject where the facts have been thoroughly redacted from official records, shooting a small fast-moving target in poor light, attempting a transport while at warp to another vessel also at warp. That is very, very difficult. But I do like how it does give you little call-outs here. Dr. McCoy is attempting to perform a complex heart surgery on Ambassador Sarek. Did it actually happen? Did McCoy do that? Possibly he did. But then what's really handy is here we have an attempting a task. It just leads us through the process nice and easily. It's very, very clear. And I think we will have something, an aid, that details this for when we're actually around the table. We talk about momentum. And threat. These are good pages. I like these. Trekno-babble and medical babble. This is so that you can sound like a crew member with ease. So you just roll a d20, and depending whether it's an action, a descriptor, a source, effect, or a device, then this will give you something. So we could amplify the emergency polaron conversion manifold. There you go. See? Sounds like I was in part of engineering already. Or how about we have an illness, an injury, a cause, a primary treatment, and a secondary treatment. So we have an accident, multiple personalities that was caused by a transporter accident malfunction. We need to do a... oh gosh, what would we need to do? A neural pathway induction with 10 cc's of corazine. That's good stuff. Oh gosh, what we got? Advanced operations. So, more advanced rules, extended tasks. And then we go into the rules regarding conflict, both personal and starship. And of course, social conflict. Maybe we are trying to negotiate. We've encountered a new species and they instantly want to destroy us. But we need to have a great diplomat on the bridge to convince them that we are here just as explorers. So it goes into more detail about personal combat, different kinds of actions, and again we got this nice layout, so it's very clear, taking you through how you do combat. We then move on to the starship equivalent. And I believe that this will have a similar, but I like how this is also split out now, because when you are doing starship combat, of course you're all going to be taking on particular roles on the bridge potentially, and this has your standard minor major actions, but then we have command and communications, helm, navigator. What does the communications do? Let's just have a quick look. Ah, so you could be encrypting and securing sensitive transmissions. Okay. Tactical sensors, and then of course we have a similar layout on how you attempt a starship attack, and assigning damage if you were successful. Warp core breach imminent. Excuse me. Okay. And then we have this great example going through so that we can understand what we have learnt. And then finally, Chapter 9, Games Mastering. So from learning all of the rules, what does the Games Master have to learn how to put forward the actual game itself? And the narrative flowchart, assigning difficulties, using traits, gaining threat, and spending threat, and then extended tasks and challenges. And that pretty much then takes us up to an introductory adventure. We won't go into that because we don't want to potentially ruin it. I just want to make sure I've gone right past. Yep, there we go. So, final chapter, I believe, is Allies and Adversaries, giving you some non-player characters. Details on how to create your NPCs, special rules for them, and then characters themselves. So we got a minor NPC of a Starfleet officer, we got a Klingon warrior, Romulan, Cardassian and Ferengi, Jem'Hadar. And then we have examples of various starships, Constitution and Galaxy class, D7, Battlecruiser, so the ones that we saw before, but done as an NPC. Got the Jem'Hadar, some creatures, and it finishes off with your character sheet, but also your starship sheet as well. And that is pretty much it. Until we get to what is the inside of the cover here. And I really like this. It's the only place that it features it. And I guess there's obviously so much information crammed into this. It's not necessarily a focus, but I've commented on this before with these other Star Trek books, is that it's a shame that they do not reference the particular episodes or the movies where certain elements, important elements, are being mentioned, because it'd be great to be able to go back to that episode and go, okay, I can see how it played out. But in this, we do have the canon screen timeline, and it basically goes through. We can see we got the original series, the start here, going into the animated series, the motion picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, working its way all the way down to Star Trek First Contact. We then have Deep Space Nine occurring with Insurrection, and then Voyager, and then Nemesis, and then all the way along to Star Trek Picard, and then of course Discovery. Discovery is right at the end of the book here, as they jump all the way to, I think it's the 32nd century, having left, where are they? All the way at the beginning here. So Discovery pretty much encompasses the entire timeline. We then have the Prime Universe timeline here of major elements that occur during the course of the Star Trek shows. Everything from Zefram Cochrane launching the Phoenix to do the first warp flight, to essentially the, what have we got here? That Romulus is destroyed by the Hobus supernova. That's where obviously the timeline split, didn't we? We had the Kelvin timeline happening, and then we do have the timeline for the Terran universe, because maybe you want to play in an alternate universe. I did notice they don't actually I didn't see anything to do with the Kelvin timeline as part of the book. So that is the hefty core rulebook for the second edition. But also, I'm going to move that to one side. To go along with this, Modiphius has also released their second edition game toolkit. And if you were going to get yourselves the second edition core rulebook, I would strongly recommend that you might want to include this as well. So the focus on the toolkit is essentially more spaceships, more space frames, and this introduces space frames from all across the entire Star Trek series and movies, and of course all sort of time frame periods as well, different eras. So this is where we do get some more of the classic ships, but we do have ships from Discovery, and in fact, there you go, we do have the Crossfield. But we've got classic ships like the Miranda from Wrath of Khan, Oberth. So a lot of these ships, players who have the first edition will be familiar with, because these were featured within the Utopia Planitia sourcebook. Of course, these have been slightly updated for the second edition. I think if you recall right at the beginning, the challenge dice have been removed from the second edition, and of course that affects how these play. If you're a new player, then it's fine, you're not going to have any confusion. You'll be able to just jump straight on into this once you've learnt the rules. Oh, we got the Defiant, Lunar class, which, if I remember rightly, yes, that was it. It was the Titan, wasn't it? Now you start geeking out, because now we got the Odyssey class, which of course is the Enterprise F. And then we have ships from Klingon Empire and from Romulans. Additional starship rules. additional mission profiles and starship talents. And then some updated rules for the Games Master, giving some a little bit more insight. So this all just enhances upon what is already available within the core set. But on top of that, we have these great cards that you can hand out at the table. So this is a really handy guide, as opposed to having to go through the core rules. These cards pretty much break down everything you need to know. So, core mechanic, as we've discussed multiple times already. Games Master tells you a difficulty. Check your character sheet and select an attribute and department that best fits the action. Add the selecting ratings together to establish your target number. And then you're rolling 2d20. Any dice rolls that are equal to or under the target number is a success. And of course, depending on the difficulty is the number of successes you need to score. These are double-sided. So this succinctly details all the rules. We have tempting an attack, personal conflict. We then have starship attack. So these would be great just to have on the table. Starship damage, a breaches card, and then we have a number of cards that are based on the different departments. So this is command and communications, and it basically goes for everything. So we got tactical, helm and navigation, engineering and operations. We then have, I'm not going to be able to show all of this, but we can do a little bit, can't we? We have the map that we saw on the inlay of the core rulebook, but now of course it's of a much larger size so that everybody around the table can take a look when they need to plot a course. Map on one side and its cover artwork on the other. And then for the actual Games Master, we have this wonderful Games Master screen. Again, I can't show it all, but what we'll do is that's the key artwork there. We have the Enterprise, and on the inside we have 4 panels that detail all of the core rules that the Games Master might require. So there you go. So I think that this toolkit is a very worthwhile addition to go along with the core rules there. Definitely worth picking up. Primarily because it features all of those additional space frames. And I think, you know, if you're a Star Trek fan, you're going to want to basically have the ship that you like from the show, and it may not be necessarily be featured in the core rules. So having them there in the toolkit, that's what you want, isn't it, really? So there you are. That is Star Trek Adventures Role-Playing Games 2nd edition, core rulebook and toolkit. Hopefully that's given you a good idea as to what is featured in this new edition. Our thanks again to Modifius Entertainment for providing copies for us to share with you this evening. Please also remember that we have got that giveaway live at this moment of time. Link is in the video description. Click on the link and winner will be announced on Monday evening. we'll be taking a break next week, so there'll be no shows, but coming back the week after that, one of the things that we will be taking a look at is another popular franchise that is returning to TV in that week. And we're going to be going back to Middle Earth and exploring Moria through the doors of Durin. This is a campaign expansion for the One Ring role-playing game from Free League Publishing. So keep an eye out on the channel's social media pages, and I will update you when we are ready to go live with that. Thank you very much for your interest tonight. If you do have any questions about Star Trek Adventures, please do leave a comment on the video. And as they say, hit that like and subscribe button. All helps the channel. Trying to get up to 1701, so maybe you can help us on our way. Adam, thanks for the Star Trek Adventures overview. You're very much welcome. I hope that it was of benefit to you. Will you be going out and getting yourself a copy? Are you going to be playing it with friends, or are you going to be going down the path of the solo, the Captain's Log version of the game? If it's your first time out with 2D20, you're going to go down the solo path. Well, I think you're going to have a great game there as well. We like our solo role-playing here on the channel. We've done quite a few games like that. So yes, I'm sure you'll have a great time with it. Alright then. That wraps it up. So thank you everybody. Have a fantastic weekend and look forward to seeing you very soon. But until then, bye for now.